Imagine paying a normal advisory fee, 1%, 2%. Now imagine paying 35%, nearly $700 million. And when the CEO asks why, the board doesn't answer. They fire him. That is the Olympus story. Not just fraud, not just accounting. A culture that treated truth like a threat. Scroll 1. A trusted organization. Olympus is not a startup. It is an institution. For decades, the name has meant optics, precision, instruments that are supposed to be honest. Most people know the cameras, the lenses, the clean clinical branding. But Olympus's real power sits in hospitals, endoscopes, surgical tools, systems that let doctors see inside the human body. In other words, Olympus sells visibility. And that matters, because visibility creates trust. By the time this scandal unfolds, Olympus isn't serving a niche. It's embedded in healthcare, operating across nearly 40 countries and regions, tens of thousands of employees, global sales and service teams, training centers, repair depots. When a hospital buys Olympus equipment, it's not a one-time purchase. It's a relationship. Maintenance, upgrades, consumables, workflow. And the footprint is massive. Olympus has claimed a dominant share of gastrointestinal endoscopes, around 70%. That means a huge portion of the world's routine scopes, screenings, procedures, cancer detection, are happening on Olympus hardware. So when Olympus reports its finances, it isn't just investors watching. It's suppliers, partners, hospitals, clinicians. A supply chain built on the assumption that Olympus is stable, careful, precise. Which is why the scandal hits differently. Not because fraud is rare, but because it's rare. So how does a company built on precision spend years manufacturing fiction? Scroll 2, the bubble years. The origin is not greed. Not at first. It is pressure. In the late 1980s, Japan's corporate world is boxed in. The yen strengthens after the Plaza Accord. Exports get harder. Margins get thinner. But the expectation inside big Japanese firms stays the same. No embarrassment. No public failure. And Olympus is not just selling cameras. It is expected to look stable. Always. So executives start chasing a shortcut. In Japan, they even had a name for it. Zytech. Financial engineering. Using markets. Derivatives. Complex instruments. To manufacture profits that the core business cannot deliver fast enough. Here is what that looks like in plain English. Instead of earning money by selling more products, you earn money by betting on price movements, currencies, interest rates, stocks, bonds. During the bubble, those bets can look genius because asset prices are rising, land prices are inflating, and the Nikkei is climbing toward the end of the decade. Then the bubble turns. By 1990, Japan's stock market collapses from its peak. And by the early 1990s, the wider asset bubble bursts. Stocks fall. Real estate follows. And suddenly, paper gains become real losses. Here's how a bet turns into a wound. Imagine Olympus buys securities expecting prices to keep rising. Or it uses derivatives designed to profit if markets stay calm. Then markets swing. Prices drop. And what was supposed to be a controlled strategy becomes an obligation. Margin calls, write-downs, losses that must be admitted. And Olympus does take hits. In the early 1990s, the numbers begin to go the wrong way. At that moment, they had to choose a door. Door number 1, admit the losses, take the pain, reset. Or door number 2, hide them. And once you choose hiding, you don't just hide a loss, you inherit a countdown. Here's the problem with losses. They don't just hurt, they reveal. Scroll 3. The loss. Graveyard. In many companies, losses are admitted, written down, moved on from. But Olympus chooses something darker. They choose to hide. Not for a quarter, not for a year, for more than a decade. The logic is simple. If the losses are visible, the myth of stability dies. So the losses are pushed off the books. A hidden graveyard. And now, Olympus has a new need. Make the problem disappear. Fast. Because hiding is not a strategy. It is a timer. And the plan they choose next is so absurd, it almost sounds like a prank. Scroll 4, the absurd solution. Olympus goes shopping. Not for innovation, not for synergy, for accounting space. The idea is brutal. Buy companies at inflated prices, record the numbers, then use the excess value to bury old losses. Here is the plain English version. On paper, they buy a company for 10 million. In reality, they pay 1 million. The missing 9 million becomes a sponge, a plug, a way to absorb earlier bad bets. And Olympus doesn't just do this once. They go on a buying spree across industries that make no strategic sense. Pet care, DVD production, anything that can hold a number on paper. But there are a few names that keep showing up. Altus, a small Japanese company linked to medical waste recycling. Humalabo, an online cosmetics business. News Chef, a microwavable cookware maker. Olympus paid about 73.4 billion yen, nearly $1 billion at the time, to buy these 3 small firms. Then most of that value gets written down, which raises the question. If these were strategic growth deals, why did the numbers collapse so fast? Because this is the real purpose. Not growth, camouflage. But one deal is so loud. It's the one that should have ended everything. Scroll 5, the 687M fee. In 2008, Olympus acquires a British medical company, Gyrus. The sale price is around $2 billion. But the real headline is not the purchase. It's the advisory fee, $687 million. A fee so high, it looks less like advice and more like a transfer. And according to the story, this money goes to unknown parties, linked to offshore structures, including the Cayman Islands. This is why the CEO question matters. Who got paid? And why? Because in fraud, money doesn't vanish, it moves. And someone did notice, not regulators, not shareholders, the auditors. Scroll 6, the auditors blink. Auditors start raising concerns. The numbers look unusual. Fees look inflated. KPMG is mentioned as one auditor raising concerns. So Olympus does not clean up. It does something colder. It switches auditors. Replace the people asking questions with someone new. This is a quiet tactic, not illegal by itself, but psychologically. It's a confession, because the company is saying, we're not changing the behavior, we're changing the witness. They think they dodged a bullet. They didn't. They hired the bullet. Scroll 7, the promotion trap. Enter Michael Woodford, British-born, rules-focused, a company man. He has been at Olympus since the 1980s, in sales, management, and Europe. By 2001, he's overseeing major European operations. Then, in 2008, he notices strange acquisitions. The Gyrus deal should have been under his watch, but Tokyo handles it, specifically senior leadership. Woodford raises an eyebrow. Then he raises questions. The response is not clarity. It is comfort, assurances, smiles, and a promotion. He's promoted to head European operations and given a board seat. And the intent is obvious. They want him to take the title and stop looking. But he doesn't. And then the company makes a move. It becomes the beginning of the end. Scroll 8, CEO for 6 months. By 2011, the Gyrus fee refuses to stay buried. And that's not an accident, because the fee is not a rounding error. It's a signal, a number so abnormal, it keeps resurfacing. In July 2011, Woodford's attention is pulled back to it. Colleagues flag reporting that raises questions about Olympus's acquisitions. And the Gyrus success fee is the headline. $687 million, roughly 1/3 of a $2 billion deal. A fee that should be 1 to 2%, not 30% plus. So Woodford does what most executives avoid. He puts the questions in writing. He demands explanations from the chairman. He asks who received the money. He asks why offshore entities are involved. And he does not trust an internal review. So he hires outside help. PricewaterhouseCoopers. A forensic-style look. PwC's findings sharpen the dread. The advisory payments appear routed through two small firms, Axis America in the US and Axum Investments in the Cayman Islands. Now the Gyrus fee isn't just expensive. It looks like a mechanism, a pipe. And once you see the pipe, you start asking what it was built to carry. Woodford brings this to the board. He expects an investigation. Instead, the board turns on him. And then comes the moment that exposes the culture. Woodford is abruptly fired. 6 months as CEO. In one meeting, he goes from president to problem. He leaves Japan on the first available flight. And now he does something even riskier. He goes outside the company. He contacts Britain's Serious Fraud Office. He sends a dossier of documents to Japan's securities watchdog. He seeks advice from British police because he is not sure if he needs protection. Then he flies to New York. He meets US investigators, including FBI and Department of Justice officials. And at that point, the scandal stops being a boardroom secret. It becomes a multi-country investigation when a whistleblower turns into a witness. Cover-up loses its oxygen. Scroll 9. Confession and collapse. Olympus admits fraudulent accounting in November 2011. But the better question is, why admit it all? Because by that point, silence is no longer private. Woodford has taken the story outside the building. Documents have reached investigators. Media coverage is escalating. Investors are demanding answers. And Olympus is facing a threat bigger than reputation. A survival threat. The Tokyo Stock Exchange can suspend or delist a company. Delisting means the company's shares are removed from the exchange. No more normal public trading. Liquidity dries up. Confidence collapses. Credit gets harder. For a public company, delisting is not just humiliation. It is suffocation. So Olympus chooses a controlled confession. They admit that past financial statements were false. They acknowledge money was used to cover investment losses. They name senior figures, former leadership, executives. The stock collapses, around 75 to 80%. Investigations spread. Japan, the UK, the US. And then the story adds another twist. Olympus survives. How? By restating its financials, filing corrected reports, year after year. It's like rebuilding a house, while the neighborhood watches. Avoiding delisting becomes the priority. Because if the listing stays, the company can raise money, keep contracts, keep customers calm, keep the machine running. But survival isn't the same as innocence. It just means the system allowed the company to keep breathing. If a company can live after a lie this big, what does that teach the next board? Scroll 10. The price of silence. Olympus was built on seeing clearly. Endoscopes, microscopes, precision, and yet, because the scandal isn't just one scheme, it is a culture that treated bad news as something to bury, a culture that used promotions, like tranquilizes. This is why Olympus is a perfect ledger of lies story. Not because it's the biggest fraud, but because it shows how fraud survives. Not through brilliance, through agreement. Agreement in boardrooms and silence. Agreement in choosing stability over reality. The lie lasted because people kept signing it. Subscribe for more lies.